Okay, so get this right. Baby Reindeer, Netflix show.
Yeah.
It's causing, like, a ton of controversy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it claims to be a true story about a comedian, Richard Gadd,
Okay.
and his experience with a stalker.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know,
Yeah.
us, we like to look deeper.
Of course. Always
Okay.
going to dig a little deeper.
Right. So for this deep dive, we've got excerpts from an interview with Fiona M. Harvey.
Okay.
It was on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Right.
Now, Fiona is the woman who says she's the inspiration for the stalker character, you know.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she is pushing back hard
yeah.
against the show.
Against the show. So she's saying it's not true.
Well, she claims almost all of it is fabricated,
Wow.
saying both Richard Gadd, the comedian, and Netflix twisted her story for profit and attention.
For profit and attention, yeah. I mean, that's a pretty serious accusation.
It is, yeah.
So
we're dealing with
potential defamation, right? I mean, this isn't just about entertainment anymore. This is about somebody's reputation that's possibly being damaged.
Yeah, it's not just entertainment. This is potentially defamation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's break down Fiona's side of the story.
Okay.
And compare it to what we see in Baby Reindeer.
Sounds good. Where do we even begin?
Well, how about at the beginning?
Makes sense to me.
So the show portrays Fiona as being instantly obsessed with Richard
Right.
after their very first meeting.
Okay.
But she claims they only met like a handful of times
Oh.
at a pub where he worked.
Right.
And there was never any romantic interest from her side.
So, I mean, that's already a pretty big discrepancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, the show, I mean, from what you're saying, it kind of sets her up as this, like really intense, you know, immediately obsessed person.
She also specifically denies the show's depiction of him offering her free drinks.
Oh, interesting.
Which is used in the show to suggest that he was, you know, trying to be polite while she was clearly infatuated.
Oh, I see. So they use that detail, like the free drinks, to kind of paint a picture of her character.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I bet that's just the beginning of the differences. Right?
Oh, yeah. The differences don't stop there.
Yeah.
Fiona also disputes the show's portrayal of her sending an overwhelming amount of communication.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking 41,000 emails.
41,000 emails.
350 voicemails.
Wow, okay.
Tons of letters, you get the picture.
Yeah, I get it. Like an avalanche of communication.
Right.
And that's a pretty common trope, right? Like in these kind of like stalker narratives.
Right. The show uses this alleged barrage of communication to paint Fiona as dangerously obsessed.
That's like a threat, basically.
Yeah. Right. But Fiona insists that she only ever sent like a few emails and one letter.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's a huge difference.
Yeah. If that's true, the show's depiction is,
it's a massive exaggeration.
It's a huge exaggeration.
Yeah.
And that could be a big problem legally.
Legally, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we're talking about defamation, right?
Yeah.
And defamation is basically when you have false statements that harm someone's reputation.
Right.
And in this case, if Fiona really only sent a handful of messages, the show portraying her as sending thousands, that could be seen as a false statement.
Right.
That paints her in a negative light.
Yeah.
And that's potentially damaging her reputation.
So it's not just about whether the events happened.
Right.
But also how they're presented and the impact that presentation might have on the audience's perception of the person.
Yeah, the context matters.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what else does Fiona dispute?
She denies ever going to Richard Gadd's house, attacking his girlfriend, or harassing his family.
All incidents depicted in the show.
Yeah, and often in pretty graphic detail, too.
Right. And those scenes are...
intense.
Pretty intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see how they would lead viewers to believe that she was dangerous.
Right, right. And that's where, that's where the potential harm really comes in, right?
Right.
I mean, if those events didn't actually happen, the show could be seen as falsely portraying Fiona as a threat.
Right.
Which could obviously have serious consequences for her life, you know, her personal life, her professional life. It could be really damaging.
Yeah. So it's like the show is using dramatic license to create a narrative that might not reflect reality.
Right.
And that could have real world consequences for Fiona.
It's a tricky situation.
This is getting heavy.
It is.
Yeah.
And it gets even more complicated when you consider the scene where the Martha character, who is clearly based on Fiona, pleads guilty to stalking and is sentenced to 9 months in prison.
Wow.
Fiona insists this never happened. She says she's never even been charged with a crime.
So that entire courtroom scene, which is like a pivotal moment in the show,
absolutely,
is potentially completely fabricated.
It could be completely made up.
That's huge. How's that?
And that's a really big deal in terms of defamation, because that scene, it's presented as a factual event in the show.
Right.
It's meant to lend credibility to Richard's story.
Right.
Reinforce the idea that Fiona is a dangerous stalker.
Yeah.
If it never happened,
right,
it could be considered a false statement that seriously harms her reputation.
Wow.
And remember, defamation isn't just about saying something untrue. It's about presenting something as truth when it isn't. And that scene is a prime example of that.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this fictionalized scene presented as truth.
Yeah.
Which is like a big problem legally.
The big problem, yeah.
And then there's the added layer of Fiona never having been charged with a crime.
Right.
That just seems especially damaging.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just adds to the whole feeling that this portrayal is unfair and inaccurate.
But wait, there's more to unpack, right? Didn't someone else come forward with allegations against Fiona?
Yes. Laura Ray, the wife of a deceased MP, claimed that Fiona had harassed her and her husband in the past.
Right.
And Richard Gadd and Netflix.
Yeah.
They used those allegations as further evidence to back up their portrayal of Fiona as having this history of stalking behavior.
So they're saying that she's done this before.
Exactly. They're trying to establish a pattern.
But of course, Fiona disputes these claims as well.
Absolutely. She claims these allegations are completely false.
Right.
And has provided details about legal action she's taken against Laura Ray.
So again, we have these two conflicting narratives.
Right. It's a he said, she said situation.
Right.
And it's tough to know for sure what happened.
Right.
But it's important to note that Fiona is very clearly pushing back against any suggestion that she has a pattern of harassment or stalking.
So we're seeing a pattern here. Fiona is denying pretty much everything the show portrays about her behavior.
Pretty much point by point.
It seems like there's a lot more to this story than just a comedian sharing his experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think is driving Fiona to speak out so forcefully against Baby Reindeer?
I think she's deeply concerned about the damage the show is doing to her reputation. I mean, remember, Fiona's a law graduate.
Right.
So she's likely well aware of the complexities of defamation law.
Right.
And the potential impact this portrayal could have on her life.
Yeah.
It's not just about clearing her name, you know, it's about protecting her future.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
If I were in her shoes, I'd probably be pretty upset too, especially knowing the potential.
The ramifications.
Yeah. Legal ramifications. It's clear that Fiona feels Baby Reindeer is painting a completely false picture of who she is.
Right.
And she's not holding back in her fight to set the record straight.
Yeah. She's definitely not mincing words.
But this whole situation begs the question.
Yeah, what is the other side? What about Richard Gadd?
Yeah. Why would Richard Gadd create this show in the first place?
Good question.
So Fiona speculates that Richard's motivations for creating Baby Reindeer were likely driven by two main factors. Financial gain.
Money, always a motivator.
Right. And seeking attention.
Seeking attention, okay.
She believes he may have embellished or even fabricated elements of his story.
So juice it up a bit to make it more dramatic.
Like make it more entertaining.
Yeah, and marketable.
Sure, it's a business.
Right.
Right. Got to sell those subscriptions.
And she also mentioned an alleged sexual assault
that Richard experienced.
Okay.
Suggesting that he might have been seeking attention or validation through the show.
Right. So using this show as a platform to process his own experiences.
Right. But it's important to note that this is just Fiona's interpretation of Richard's motivation.
Of course. We haven't heard his side of the story yet.
Right. It's important to remember that there are always multiple perspectives in situations like this.
Absolutely.
But hearing Fiona's side and seeing how strongly she refutes the show's portrayal, it's hard not to wonder about the choices Richard Gadd made in creating Baby Reindeer.
Right. It raises a lot of questions.
So where is Fiona at now in her life? after this whole ordeal?
Well, despite the way she's portrayed in Baby Reindeer, Fiona is actually a law graduate in a long-term relationship. She, leads a relatively normal life, which starkly contrasts with, the unhinged stalker image the show presents.
It really makes you think about the impact this show could have on people's perceptions of her.
It's one thing if it's like a fictional character, but when it's so clearly based on a real person, those lines get really blurry.
It's understandable why Fiona feels so strongly about setting the record straight.
Yeah, absolutely. She's fighting to control her own narrative.
Exactly.
And she's not just talking about it. She's taking action. Fiona is adamant about pursuing legal action against Richard Gadd and Netflix for defamation.
So she's ready to take this all the way.
She's not letting this go.
Wow. This is getting serious.
It is. It sounds like a real...
Like David and Goliath.
David and Goliath, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, because we all know that David won in the end, so...
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe Fiona's got a fighting chance.
So let's take a step back.
And
recap what we've learned so far.
Yeah, good idea.
From Fiona's perspective.
Okay. So from Fiona's perspective, we've seen a very stark contrast between how she's portrayed in Baby Reindeer and how she describes herself and her interactions with Richard. She's denied almost every single allegation made against her, including the volume of communication, physical stalking, and even a fictionalized court scene. This raises a lot of questions about the accuracy of the show and the potential for harm to Fiona's reputation.
It's wild to think that a show claiming to be a true story could be so far from the truth, at least according to Fiona.
Yeah, according to Fiona.
But I have a feeling this is just
the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to uncover here.
Okay, so in the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve into the public and media reaction to Baby Reindeer. And Fiona's interview. We'll see how people are responding to this controversy. And explore the larger debate around artistic license, defamation, and the responsibility of creators when adapting real-life events for entertainment.
A lot to unpack there. Looking forward to it.
This is definitely a case where there are no easy answers. And the stakes are high.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to see what other insights we uncover as we continue this deep dive.
It's a fascinating case. It raises important questions about the power of storytelling and the potential consequences when real lives become entangled with fiction.
So stick with us. We'll be right back with part 2 of our deep dive into the Baby Reindeer controversy. Welcome back. So we've just heard Fiona's side of the Baby Reindeer story. And it's safe to say she paints a very different picture. Than the Netflix show.
Than what we see on screen.
But how has the public reacted?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, it's been a whirlwind. Fiona's interview on Piers Morgan Uncensored, I mean, it really ignited a firestorm of debate. A lot of people are outraged on her behalf, especially those who believe that Baby Reindeer unfairly portrays her
as a dangerous stalker.
Exactly.
I can imagine if her claims are true. This show could have
a devastating impact on her life.
And that's fueling a lot of the discussion around the ethics
of it all,
of using real life events as inspiration for entertainment.
Like, where's the line, right? How far is too far?
People are questioning whether Richard Gadd, Netflix overstepped boundaries, and whether they have a responsibility to ensure that their work doesn't cause harm to real individuals.
To real people. It's a tricky situation for sure.
It's on one hand, artists often draw inspiration from their own experiences in the world around them.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, there's a responsibility.
A responsibility to consider the consequences. Especially when you're dealing with sensitive topics.
Especially with sensitive topics like
stalking.
Absolutely.
And that's where the concept of artistic license comes in, right? So while creators should have the freedom to interpret and adapt real life events for their work, it's crucial to consider the potential harm that could arise from misrepresenting or exaggerating certain details.
So what are people saying specifically about Baby Reindeer and Fiona's interview?
So are there any common themes or perspectives emerging?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there are a few
key camps in this debate. One group is firmly on Fiona's side. They're calling for Netflix to take down the show.
Wow.
Arguing that it's essentially a defamatory work that has unjustly damaged her reputation and potentially put her safety at risk.
That's pretty good.
That's a strong stance.
Strong stance.
Yeah, they're not messing around.
Okay, so what about
those who support
Richard Gadd and Netflix? Yeah. What are their arguments?
Yeah, what are they saying?
So their main argument revolves around artistic license and the inherent nature of storytelling.
Right.
They contend that Baby Reindeer is ultimately a work of fiction, inspired by real events.
Okay.
And that viewers should understand that certain creative liberties were taken for dramatic effect.
So they're saying that?
They're saying that audiences should be savvy enough to differentiate between a fictionalized account and a purely factual documentary.
Right. They're not the same thing.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so they're arguing that viewers are capable of understanding that
characters and events might be altered or embellished for entertainment purposes.
But what about
the
potential consequences for Fiona?
Right. That's the big question.
Do they address that?
Yeah, do they address that at all?
Some do.
Right.
They acknowledge the possibility of unintended harm.
Okay.
But they generally believe that the benefits of artistic expression outweigh the risks. They emphasize the importance of allowing creators to explore complex themes and share their perspectives without being overly restricted by concerns about potential defamation.
So it sounds like this debate is really highlighting this tension between protecting individual reputations and upholding creative freedom.
It is, absolutely. And there's no easy solution.
Yeah, there's no easy solution. It's a complex issue with, valid arguments on both sides.
Right.
But the Baby Reindeer controversy has certainly brought this debate to the forefront and forced us to grapple with these ethical and legal gray areas.
Yeah, it's interesting how this case is sparking such a wide range of reactions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people are calling for boycotts and censorship, while others are defending artistic expression and the need for creative freedom.
Right.
It feels like this debate goes beyond just this one show.
This one show, it's bigger than Baby Reindeer.
Yeah, and it touches on broader societal questions.
Societal questions about how we consume media.
About how we consume and interpret media.
Yeah. What do we believe? What do we question?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. This case is raising fundamental questions about our responsibility as viewers.
As viewers, what's our role in all of this?
Should we approach every true story?
Yeah.
With a healthy dose of skepticism?
Skepticism. I mean, that's a good question.
Do we need to be more critical?
More critical.
Of the narratives presented to us?
Especially in the age of streaming.
Especially in the age of streaming.
Where the lines between fact and fiction are becoming increasingly blurred.
Right. It's a lot to think about.
It is a lot to think about.
And it's a conversation that I think is essential to have.
Is essential.
Yeah. In a world where information is so readily available.
Yeah, at our fingertips.
Right. And often presented in a highly engaging and emotional way.
Yeah, for sure.
It's more important than ever to be discerning consumers of media.
Discerning consumers of media.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to be aware of the potential for bias, manipulation, and misrepresentation.
Even in content that claims to be... based on a true story.
On real events.
Yeah. Buyer beware, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to Fiona's case.
Okay, so back to Fiona.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if we accept that Baby Reindeer is a fictionalized account, the question remains.
The question remains.
How much artistic license is too much?
How much is too much? Where's the line?
At what point does creative interpretation
cross the line
into
potential defamation?
Yeah, and that's
the $1 million question, isn't it?
That's the $1 million question.
And it's a question that legal experts and ethicists
Yeah.
will likely be debating
for years.
For years to come.
For years to come.
Yeah.
This isn't going away anytime soon.
But focusing back on Fiona's situation,
Okay, so Fiona...
she is adamant that she's going to fight back against this portrayal.
Okay.
She's already stated her intent to pursue legal action against Richard Gadd and Netflix for defamation.
Wow. Okay. So she's going for it.
So she's really ready to...
She's going all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah. This is where things get really interesting from a legal standpoint.
From a legal standpoint, yeah.
Defamation lawsuits are notoriously complex.
Complex, yeah.
Especially when they involve...
Figures.
Public figures.
And creative works.
Yeah,
that's a whole other ballgame.
You mentioned earlier that defamation is about false statements.
False statements.
That harm someone's reputation.
Right.
But how does that apply to...
To a show like Baby Reindeer.
Yeah, a show like Baby Reindeer, which is presented as
a work of fiction.
A fictionalized account.
A fictionalized account.
That's
a crucial point.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in defamation cases involving creative works, the courts would have to consider whether the average viewer would believe
the
work to be a factual account.
To be factual. Yeah, is this being presented as truth?
And whether the plaintiff has suffered actual harm.
Real harm.
As a result of the portrayal.
Yeah. So, like, not just hurt feelings.
Right.
Real tangible damage.
So in Fiona's case... her legal team would have to prove that a reasonable person watching Baby Reindeer would believe it to be a true and accurate representation of her.
A true and accurate representation.
And that the show's portrayal has caused real damage to her reputation.
Yeah.
Potentially affecting her career, relationships.
Her life, basically.
Or overall well-being.
Yeah. Her livelihood, her relationship.
Right.
Her mental health, all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's...
not always an easy thing to prove.
Yeah. That's not always an easy task.
No.
They would need to present...
compelling evidence.
Yeah.
Real proof.
To support those claims.
Right. Not just speculation.
Which could include things like expert testimony.
Right.
Bringing in the experts.
Public opinion polls.
See what the public thinks. Or examples of how the show has negatively
directly impacted Fiona's life. Yeah, so like lost job opportunities, you know, damaged relationships, things like that. It sounds like a challenging
legal battle.
Yeah, uphill battle for sure.
But I'm sure her background as a law graduate
that's going to come in handy.
Will be an asset in this fight.
Yeah, she's got the knowledge.
It's fascinating to think about how this case could potentially set a precedent for future cases involving artistic license and defamation.
Yeah, so this could be a landmark case.
Yeah,
it could really set the standard for how these kinds of cases are handled in the future.
So we've got this legal battle brewing.
Yeah.
We've got a heated public debate
about artistic license.
And ethical responsibility.
Big topics.
And we've got Fiona caught in the middle of it all. Fighting to reclaim her narrative.
Fighting for her voice to be heard.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is.
This case really highlights
the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
And the potential consequences.
Yeah.
When real lives become intertwined with fiction.
It's a reminder that even in the realm of entertainment.
Yeah.
Actions have consequences.
Yeah. I mean, you can't just throw something out there and expect there to be no impact.
And it begs the question.
But that's the question.
How can we as a society navigate this increasingly complex landscape? Where truth and fiction collide.
Yeah. Where those lines get blurry.
How can we encourage creativity while also protecting individuals from harm? That's the big challenge. That's a question we'll be exploring.
In the final part.
Of our deep dive. We'll delve into potential solutions. And consider what steps creators, platforms, and
audiences can take.
To ensure stories are told
responsibly.
Without silencing creativity or stifling artistic expression.
It's a tough balance. But it's a conversation we need to have.
We'll be right back.
Okay.
With the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Into the Baby Reindeer controversy. Don't go anywhere.
Looking forward to it.
All right, so we're back.
Back again.
And ready to tackle The big question, right?
The big one.
What can we do about situations like Fiona's?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
There's this tension, right?
Yeah, definitely tension.
Between creative freedom
right.
and protecting people from harm when their lives become the inspiration for entertainment.
It's a tough balancing act, for sure.
So what is
a potential solution?
How can we navigate this gray area?
This gray area where storytelling and real life intersect.
Yeah, where they kind of collide.
Yeah, exactly.
So one idea is
more transparency.
Yeah, transparency.
Transparency, yeah.
From creators.
From the people making the stuff, yeah.
What if Richard Gadd or Netflix had been upfront about the fictional elements of Baby Reindeer?
Yeah, what if they'd said, hey, we took some liberties here?
Right. Imagine a disclaimer at the beginning.
Oh, interesting.
Saying that certain events
were changed,
altered, or composite characters were created for dramatic effect.
Yeah, like, this is inspired by, but not a literal retelling.
Right.
Something like that.
It wouldn't erase all ethical concerns, but it would at least acknowledge that the show isn't like a completely accurate portrayal of reality.
It's like saying, hey, this is based on something real, but we played around with it a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, to make it a good story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about being honest with the audience.
Honesty.
About the line between fact and fiction.
Fact and fiction, which is increasingly blurred.
Blurred these days.
Another idea that's gaining traction is the concept of
consent. Ooh, interesting.
What if creators were legally or ethically obligated to obtain consent
from the individual,
from the real people
whose lives they're drawing from?
That's a big one.
It seems like a step towards greater accountability. And respect for the people whose stories are being told.
Like, hey, is it okay if we tell your story?
Right.
Is this cool with you?
Right.
Yeah.
But of course, consent isn't always straightforward.
Right. I mean, what if they're...
For situations where individuals might be...
deceased.
Or unable to give consent for other reasons.
And what about stories that involve...
sensitive topics?
Sensitive or controversial topics where obtaining consent might be...
really tricky.
Difficult or even impossible.
Yeah.
These are all complexities.
Yeah, it's not a perfect solution.
That would need careful consideration. Yeah, a lot to think about there.
But even raising the issue of consent and having those conversations could lead to more
thoughtful and
ethical
storytelling. Absolutely.
It can encourage creators to think critically about the potential impact.
The impact of their
work on real people.
And let's not forget about
the platforms.
All of streaming platforms like Netflix.
Yeah, they have a lot of power.
They have a huge influence.
A ton of influence.
On what content that gets produced and how it's marketed to audiences.
How it's presented to us, the viewers.
Right.
They control a lot.
They're the gatekeepers.
The gatekeepers, exactly.
In many ways.
So what kind of responsibility do they bear in situations like this? Big question.
Well, they could implement stricter guidelines for shows that claim to be based on a true story.
Based on true stories?
Yeah.
Maybe they can require creators
to prove it a little bit.
To provide more context.
To
claimers or even evidence.
Yeah, like back it up.
To support their claims.
Yeah, show your work, basically.
They could also create a process for individuals to raise concerns.
Ooh, interesting.
Or challenge portrayals.
Yeah, like a feedback system.
That they believe to be
inaccurate
or harmful.
Oh yeah, like, hey, this is not right.
And they could also go a step further and invest in educational initiatives.
Education, always a good thing.
Right. To help viewers better understand
the difference
between
fact and fiction.
Fact and fiction. Help us be more media literate.
It's about empowering audiences to be
more savvy,
more critical consumers of media.
Media consumers, yeah, we got to be smart about this stuff.
Right.
And to recognize the potential for manipulation or misrepresentation.
Absolutely.
Even in content that claims to be based on real events.
Because it might not be the whole truth.
Right.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Those are all good ideas.
Good ideas.
I like that.
Yeah. So ultimately,
it's a shared
responsibility.
The responsibility.
It's on everything.
Creators need to be mindful of the potential consequences of their work.
Of what they put out into the world.
Platforms need to set clear guidelines.
And
prioritize ethical considerations.
And audiences
need to engage with content critically.
And
be aware of the
blurred lines between reality
and fiction. It's a complex issue.
It really is. Look, there
no
easy answers.
He's
an important one.
But what stands out to you as the most crucial takeaway?
The most crucial takeaway from this whole Baby Reindeer controversy is
the one thing.
The one thing you hope listeners will
ponder
after this deep dive. That's a great question.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. I think for me, it's the realization that that stories have power.
Yeah.
They can inform, they can inspire, they can entertain, but they can also wound and inflict real harm. As we move forward in this age of content creation and consumption, it's crucial to be mindful of the ethical implications of storytelling. And to strive for a balance between creative expression and respect. For individual dignity.
That's a powerful
message.
And I think it's a reminder that we all have a role to play. In shaping the stories that are told and how they impact the world around us.
So thanks for diving deep with us today.
The pleasure was all mine. This has been a
thought-provoking
exploration of a complex issue.
And for you listening.
Yeah, for everyone out there.
We hope this deep dive has given you
some new perspectives.
To consider. Until next time. Keep questioning.
Keep
exploring.
Keep exploring.
And keep those critical thinking caps on.
Absolutely.